Yes, guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Bright. This is the Bright Show Podcast Boxing. And guys, this is my top 10 heavyweights ranking. Now, I am doing this because recently the WBC released their rankings and they had Rico Verhoeven at number 8. And that was a disgrace. That is unacceptable, given the fact that Rico Verhoeven has only had 2 boxing fights. And yes, be it one of it against Oleksandr Usyk, the best fighter in the division. But I think that he should not be in the top 10. So this is my rankings. And this ranking is based on who has been active and who actually deserves to be in the top 10. So without wasting much time, let's get straight into it. So number 1 on my list is the obvious, Oleksandr Usyk, the cat. I think Usyk is number 1 because I don't think there's any argument about Usyk being number 1 in the heavyweight division. I know that a lot of people started questioning Usyk's legacy, his reputation after the fight against Rico Verhoeven, where, granted, he had a really difficult fight. He had a difficult performance. It looked like Usyk, was thinking about something else than boxing. And he was in there and he found it really difficult to, make Rico Verhoeven look like a novice that he is. But one thing that we can always bank on when it comes to Usyk, and one thing that separates the really good fighters from the elite fighters, is the ability to change the trajectory of the fight. And that's exactly what Oleksandr Usyk did in the Rico Verhoeven fight, where, Usyk found something in the 11th round and changed the way the fight was going. So look, Usyk is number 1. Now look, he's been mandated to fight Agit Kabayel. So we will see if Agit Kabayel has got something in him to upset Usyk. But for me right now, Oleksandr Usyk is number 1 and there's no debate about that. Number 2 on my list is Daniel Dubois. I feel like Dubois is having an Indian summer. I feel like Dubois is having a great time, having become a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world. And I think Dubois deserves the number 2 spot because we saw that performance against Fabio Wardley. That was a really good performance. That was a great performance. That was a gutsy performance. That was a performance that I think a lot of people did not expect Daniel Dubois to have it in him, to be able to bring that performance out. I picked Dubois to win and I picked Dubois to beat Fabio Wardley, but I think a lot of people thought that Fabio Wardley will be too much. People thought that Daniel Dubois' heart will give up. People thought that Daniel Dubois will not have it in him to, step on the gas or even be resilient when he had to. But Dubois actually proved a lot of people wrong and he won that fight in a devastating fashion and it was a great win. So I think Daniel Dubois, being 2-time heavyweight champion, currently being one of the only champions in the heavyweight division, definitely deserves the number 2 spot because I think, Dubois' performance was great and I'm quite interested to see who Dubois fights next. He deserves the number 2 spot. Number 3 on my list is Agit Kabayel. Now look, Kabayel's situation is quite strange when you look at it because he's not a world champion, but there's a lot of weight behind Agit Kabayel. There's a lot of, I would say hype, not from, the casual boxing fans, but actually from the hardcore boxing fans, because a lot of people look at Agit Kabayel and they go, look, this guy is a really good fighter. He's recently had some fantastic wins, beating Zhilei Zhang, beating Frank Sanchez, recently beating Damian Niba in a fight which I think he struggled a little bit in the earlier rounds to get going, but I think that was due to the fact that he hasn't fought a long time. But one thing that I always criticize Kabayel about is that, number 1, his team are not doing a good job in promoting him. Like promoting him and making everyone in the world know that this guy is a really good fighter. And number 2, I don't think that Kabayel fights often enough, right? I think someone like Kabayel should be fighting twice a year, maybe 3 times a year at least. But what we see is that Kabayel normally fights twice a year or maybe once a year, and I don't think it's good for his career. But I think he deserves the number 3 spot because I think, he's been very active. I think he's beating some really good fighters. I think he's put himself in a good position to face Oleksandr Usyk, which has now been ordered by the WBC to face Usyk and to get his title shot. And then we can see what he can do. I think Kabayel is one of those fighters that have the style to give Usyk some problems. Although I think Usyk is the favourite going into that fight, but I still think Kabayel has got something to give Usyk, and it'll be really interesting to see how Kabayel goes about, proving people wrong and proving himself right. So I think Kabayel definitely deserves the number 3 spot. Number 4 on my list is Fabio Wardley. Now look, Fabio Wardley recently came off a devastating loss against Daniel Dubois. That was a brutal loss. One that, many fighters do not come from, and one that, to be honest, a lot of fighters lose themselves after losing a fight like that. And I think even Daniel Dubois has lost a lot of himself in that ring. Come to think of it, Fabi Wardley has lost even more in the ring because he took a heck of a punishment. His face was a bloody mess. And, his team failed him because his team should have kept him out of that fight. After the 7th or 8th round, his team should have taken him out, because he could have, have the opportunity to fight for another world title, which he's going to do because Fabi Wardley has activated the rematch clause against Daniel Dubois. And although I don't think that he has any chance in that fight, I think that, he deserves the opportunity to go out there and see if he can win his world title back. So I think he deserves the number 4 spot. He's not out of there yet. If he loses against Daniel Dubois in the next fight, then he's not in the top 5 or maybe not in the top 8. But for now, I think Fabi Wardley definitely deserves to be in the top 4, and number 4 on my list is definitely where I think he deserves to be. And then number 5 on the list is Tyson Fury. Now look, Tyson Fury recently came back from retirement. Now, Fury said he was retired. Fury claimed that, he was taking a break and then he was retired and he was never coming to boxing again. And then all of a sudden, Fury announces that he was going to fight Arslanbek Makhmudov. And then we saw that fight. Fury had a decent performance. I think in Fury's mind, he was going to stop Makhmudov, but I don't think Fury at this stage has got the power or, even the ability to stop younger fighters like Makhmudov, because you need a lot more, because, he's resilient and he's a tough guy and he can take a lot of shots. And I think Fury tried his best. But what we saw there was a Tyson Fury that's a little bit old, that probably doesn't have the power anymore. And as I said, it was a really good win. But, I think that Fury definitely deserves the number 5 spot. It'll be interesting to see who Fury fights next, because the rumor is that Fury is going to fight someone before he fights Anthony Joshua next. So Fury being number 5 on the list, I think he deserves it. I think that's where he needs to be. And then number 6 on my list is Anthony Joshua. Now look, Joshua has been through a lot. Joshua has been through, some serious stuff in his personal life, but he's back. He's fighting Christian Prenga. And there's a lot of talks about whether this fight is right for Joshua or whether Christian Prenga is, not a good fighter enough for Joshua. But look, I think Joshua is preparing for Tyson Fury. I think Christian Prenga is a decent fighter. It looks like he hits hard. I think Joshua is going to make easy work of it. But I made a video recently saying that Anthony Joshua has to be careful because this could be a banana skin. But look, before that, Joshua fight Jake Paul, which we don't count. It was just an exhibition fight. It didn't mean nothing. Before that, Joshua fought Daniel Dubois, and we saw Joshua's frailties, being laid bare for everyone to see. So Anthony Joshua has got the opportunity to, maybe redeem himself against Christian Prenga, get in there, bash Christian Prenga all over the ring, and then prepare for Tyson Fury and maybe win that fight against Tyson Fury. And then he can climb, up onto the rankings, maybe between 1 to 5. But I think right now, Anthony Joshua definitely number 6 on the list. And it'll be interesting to see how he fights against Prenga and how he prepares against Tyson Fury later on. So number 7 on my list is Filip Hrgovic. Now look, I think Filip Hrgovic has had an interesting career. He's had some really good wins. He's had some losses where you think, is this guy really serious? Is this guy going to do anything in the heavyweight division? But then when he gives interviews and when he talks, you can see that he's still motivated. He still wants to achieve a lot in boxing. And the rumor is that he will be fighting Moses Itauma somewhere in August. And that is the announcement that I think everybody is waiting to hear, waiting to see. So look, I think Filip Hrgovic definitely deserves to be number 7 on that list. I think, he's had some really good wins. I mean, he didn't get a lot of credit beating someone like Dave Allen, but look, it was a fight that was in front of him. He had to take it and he took it. And now he's going to prepare for Moses Itauma, which I think is an asset test for Moses Itauma, but also for Filip Hrgovic. If he can beat Itauma, I think he puts himself in a good position to fight for a world title. So I think he deserves definitely to be in number 7. And then number 8 on my list is Frank Sanchez. Now, Frank Sanchez, I think, deserves to be number 8 because he came back from a loss against Agit Kabayel. And I think he redeemed himself against Torres. That was a devastating knockout. That was a massive shot. That was a big shot that he landed on Torres. And, it was all she wrote. That was a beautiful knockout. It was a good performance. He's announced himself again. I think he deserves to be in the top 10. He definitely deserves to be number 8 on the list. And I think, there's a lot more good fights that he's going to have in the division. I'm looking forward to seeing him fight some really good fighters, see if he can prove himself even further and climb up the heavyweight rankings. And then we can see what he's made of. So I think Frank Sanchez definitely deserves to be number 8 on the list. Number 9 on that list is the young man, Moses Itauma. Now look, Moses Itauma is not up on my list yet because I think he needs 1 or 2 more fights before he fights for a world title. But so far, from what we've seen from Moses Itauma, it's a brilliant career so far. Brilliant win against Jermaine Franklin. Fantastic performance. He was measured, he was calculated, he was fast, he displayed power, he displayed boxing ability, and Itauma looks like a real deal. And look, people will ask questions about his heart, about his chin, which questions that I have asked as well. So look, it'll be interesting to see what Moses Itauma we see next in the fight against Filip Hrgovic. If he can get rid of Filip Hrgovic in an early round like he did against all the other opponents, then boy oh boy do we have a massive star on our hands in the heavyweight division. If Itauma can get in there and make easy work of Filip Hrgovic, then I think he's going to go all the way and achieve a lot. But look, there are harder tests to come for Itauma, and it'll be interesting to see if he comes through that test against Filip Hrgovic and then what he does next going into his career. So I think he deserves to be number 9 because I think there's a lot more that I want to see from him, and his body of work is good, but not good enough to be, higher on the rankings. And then the last person, the number 10 on my ranking, is Deontay Wilder. Now look, with all these fighters from number 1 to number 9, I think Deontay Wilder is the most diminished fighter in that ranking. I think he is. I think Deontay Wilder is almost certainly done, but I put Wilder in the top 10 because his recent win against Derek Chisora was a good fight. It was a good win. It was a scrappy fight. It was, two uncles fighting in a pub sort of fight. It was a fight where there was no technical display. It was just two guys swinging for the fences. But, I got to give Wilder some credit. I said that he was done a few years ago, and I still think he's done. I think everyone in this ranking beats Deontay Wilder right now. But I think from that win against Derek Chisora, I think Deontay Wilder definitely deserves to be number 10, maybe number 11. Maybe I am being too generous when it comes to Deontay Wilder, but I think, he's done enough to be in that ranking, and it'll be interesting to see what Deontay Wilder does next, because I think he wanted the Anthony Joshua fight. Joshua is now going to fight Tyson Fury after fighting Prenga. So what's Deontay Wilder going to do? He needs to fight somebody and needs to fight somebody quick. If he's going to become a world champion again, as he keeps saying, then he needs to be active this year. So it'll be interesting to see what Deontay Wilder does next going forward. So guys, this is my top 10 heavyweight rankings. I am interested to know what you guys think about my ranking. I am also very interested to know what your rankings are. So get in the comment section. Let me know what you think, but also let me know what your top 10 is currently and why. Why have you chosen certain fighters? Give me an explanation. If you do not agree with mine, let me know in the comment section, and then we can have a conversation about it, because I am always open to having a chat, to having a debate about why I've made certain decisions. So guys, get in the comment section and let me know what you think about this.